Senators Mark Warner and Marco Rubio are calling for a single leader to coordinate cleanup efforts after the SolarWinds hack. They write in a letter, quote, "The federal government's response so far has lacked the leadership and coordination warranted by a significant cyber event." Brigadier General Greg Touhill, U.S. Air Force retired, is president of AppGate Federal Group and former federal chief information security officer. Greg, welcome back. It's good to see you again. Walk me through the triage that's involved in a hack like this and all of the pieces of the government that are involved in understanding what happened and what happens next.
Well, as you take a look at the triage, the first thing is every department and agency has to be pulled, and I believe they've already done this through the Federal CISO Council, to see, first of all, who downloaded that contaminated software and employed it throughout their systems. So that has already been done across the federal government. Now, they've gone through and they're in the process of seeing, okay, how many folks did this? And then further, are there any indicators that somebody actually from the outside leveraged some of the weaknesses that were introduced by the poison code? So all of that is underway right now, but the broader and the more difficult task is, so what do you do next? If in fact you have had this type of breach, or you've had a supply chain divot in the road where you've had some contaminated code, typically a very capable nation state actor is going to come in and they're going to leave behind other pieces of code that leave a back door that they can come into later that you may not understand how that has been put in place and be able to detect that. So in some cases, for really high risk enterprises, they're going to have to make some decisions and say, I've been breached. Maybe I need to burn down what I've had, my infrastructure, and replace it with new stuff that hasn't been breached. And that kind of risk management decision is part of the calculus, not only in the federal government, but across the private sector as well.
That you went where I anticipated that you would go, which is there becomes a point of no return, I imagine, where one decides or an organization decides we just can't take the chance that there still is something there that we can't find. Would one person, as the senators have proposed, be the right person to help lead that decision-making across government, or where should that decision-making process live, do you think, Greg?
Ideally, I would put that in the Chief Information Security Officer's lap. But as you take a look at the birthright, authorities, and empowerment of the federal CISO, Congress has yet to act to spell out what those authorities are and further give the federal Chief Information Security Officer the empowerment to go out and coordinate a lot of those activities. So the federal Chief Information Officer is somebody who has got the power of persuasion, but not necessarily the authority that Congress has given. Now, that said, my understanding is late last night, Ann has been appointed to lead the effort on incident response across the federal government. And Ann is extremely capable. She's got the technical background as well as the executive and leadership background to help make things happen across both .gov as well as .mil. And that'll be extremely helpful. But ultimately, nobody wants to burn down any infrastructure. And I think what's going to happen is this is going to accelerate the implementation of zero trust as a security strategy, because this is probably going to happen again from the standpoint of having supply chain deficiencies highlighted.
If you don't burn down the infrastructure, though, is zero trust sufficient, or are the other tools that agencies have at their disposal, are they enough to ensure that you're safe against whatever code might be there that you don't see?
I don't think if you rely solely on tools alone, you're never going to get risk to zero. And as you take a look at cybersecurity writ large, it's about people, process, and technology. And the response to actions like this, this particular incident, has to factor in the people, the process, and the technology. And zero trust as a strategy is not just based on the technology. It's on all of the above. So I think as you take a look at trying to minimize risk, using the zero trust security strategy takes the blast radius down from the entire enterprise down to the individual. And that's really where the state of the art is right now. And the federal government's been late to need in implementing it.
We have about a minute left, Greg. Is this something from which an organization or the government as an enterprise recovers? Is it something that one feels that we are past? What's the end look like for thinking about a breach like SolarWinds?
Well, I don't think you're ever going to see the end of these type of breaches. What you have to do is you have to put in place the strategies, the policies, and you have to execute extremely well to minimize your risk. We're going to see supply chain breaches in the future, just as we've seen them in the past. This one is the most serious one that I've seen thus far. But that said, the government doesn't stop, and neither do your businesses. So you have to put in place those strategies, the plans, and the execution that's going to enable you to take a punch and keep on going. And when it comes to this particular incident, there's still a lot more to learn, but I believe that this is really going to accelerate the need to implement zero trust security strategies in both .gov as well as .mil and across the private sector as well.
Greg Touhill, thanks very much as always.
Thanks so much, Francis. Great seeing you.